Welcome to this course, Sociology of Education. I'm glad to be your tutor in this course. My name is Onyx Opati, and I'll be taking you through this course, Sociology of Education. You see, the question we'll be asking ourselves is, what is sociology of education? Is there a relationship between society and schooling? And what is the nature of that relationship? Is it symbiotic? How does society feed into education? And how does education feed into society? Without further ado, let's dive right into it. So, what is sociology of education? Sociology of education is the study of the relationship between education and society. You see, it explores how education influences social processes like social mobility, inequality, and cultural transmission, and how society in turn shapes education systems. Schools aren't just places where learning happens, they are social institutions that reflect and reinforce cultural value, that reinforce political priorities, that reinforce economic realities. Now, the key concepts in this field includes social institutions, such as family, religious organizations, the government, and how these institutions influence education. And then there's culture, which is simply put the shared norms, the shared values that shape what and how we teach. What about power and inequality? Asking who benefits from education and who is left out. And then, of course, is the role of education in societal development. That is, how it contributes to progress, to cohesion, to division. And yes, sometimes there are instances where education contributes to division. Now, where did this field come from? The development of sociology of education began in the 19th century during the time of rapid industrialization and social change. You see, as societies grew more complex, thinkers began asking how education could help manage these transformations. And we can't talk about sociology without talking about these two key figures, and they are Auguste Comte, who is often called the father of sociology, and introduced positivism. Positivism is the idea that society can be studied scientifically through observable facts and social laws. Then there is Emily Durkheim, one of the first to apply sociological thinking to education, emphasizing its social function, how schools help maintain social order and transmit shared values. Their work laid the foundation of understanding education, not just as a technical process, but as a deeply social one. So what does sociology deal with, more broadly? First, it studies human behavior in group settings. That's basic. If you're asked what sociology deals with, the basic description will be it studies human behavior in group settings. You see how institutions and relationships shape our actions. In education, this means examining how schools reflect cultural norms and reproduce or challenge social hierarchies. Second, sociology explores culture, social structures, and stratification. Asking how cultural values influence curriculum, how social class affects access to education, and how education can either promote or hinder social mobility. To do this, sociology operates as a scientific discipline. And why scientific and how? Because it relies on systematic, on empirical, and on objective investigation. Sociologists look for patterns and causes in social behavior, and because society is complex, sociology often draws from other fields like psychology, like economics, like political science, to just build a fuller picture. There are several approaches in sociology that help us study education. We do have the historical approach that examines how social issues evolve over time. We do have the comparative approach, which looks at differences across societies or historical periods. We do have the functional approach that asks what role each part of society plays in maintaining stability. We do have the correlational approach that explores cause-effect relationships between social phenomena. In other words, what causes what and what is the final outcome. And then of course we have the participant observation approach, which involves researchers immersing themselves in the group being studied. All of these methodologies rely on systematic investigation, which brings us to sociology as a science. Sociology is deemed to be a science. Though there's a lot of arguments about that, but there are reasons why many scholars think of sociology as a science. And why? You see, sociology uses empirical, observable, and measurable data to understand social phenomena. The positivist paradigm emphasizes objectivity and testability, aiming to study society the way scientists study nature, through evidence and not just opinion. Now, sociology isn't just one thing, it has branches. What are these branches? There is sociological theory, which provides frameworks to explain how society works. And then there are applied branches like urban sociology, rural sociology, and medical sociology, to name a few, which explore how social forces operate in specific contexts, from cities to villages to healthcare systems. Let's now shift to the philosophy of education, which helps us think about the purpose and direction of teaching. We'll start with the individualistic pedagogy. Every time you hear the word pedagogy, just know it deals with the teaching and learning. This approach puts the child at the center. Individualistic, the way it sounds, it puts the child at the center. It emphasizes such educational ideals such as personal development, autonomy, or if I may, autonomy of thought, and natural learning. Educational thinkers like Jean-Jacques Rousseau and Immanuel Kant and Ivan Illich and Friedrich Froebel all contributed to this view. In this model, the teacher acts as a guide, helping learners explore their interests and grow at their own pace. On the other hand, we have social pedagogy. This philosophy sees education as a tool for socialization. In other words, a way to prepare individuals to contribute to society. John Dewey and Emile Durkheim were key proponents of this thought. And here the teacher plays a more directive role, like a director, guiding students towards societal values and collective goals. Both philosophies raise an important question. How do we balance individual development with societal needs? In other words, are you going to school for your own sake or for the sake of society? In child-centered approaches, the focus is on nurturing the learner's unique potential. In socially determined models, the emphasis is on preparing learners to meet the expectation of their community. The teacher's role shifts depending on which philosophy is prioritized, from facilitator to a social guide. This leads us to a key tension in educational philosophy, that is individual development versus societal expectations. You go to school for the most part because you want to better your life. But you also go to school because the society needs that expertise when you graduate. Now, in child-centered models, the teacher supports exploration and autonomy. In social pedagogy, the teacher helps shape learners into responsible citizens. But both roles are valid, as you might imagine, and both require thoughtful reflection as well. Now, let's look at social theories in education. Sociological theory helps us interpret how education works and why sometimes it doesn't. There are two major perspectives: consensus and conflict. Consensus theory argues that society functions smoothly through shared norms and shared values. Education in this way promotes unity and stability. Conflict theories, on the other hand, see society as shaped by power struggles and inequality. Education can reproduce privilege or challenge it, depending on how it's structured. And we will delve a little deeper into this in another lecture. But what you need to know is that these theories guide how we design curriculum, how we shape policy, and how we understand socialization process. They help us, above all else, ask, are we reinforcing the status quo or are we transforming it? And finally, we arrive at sociology of education in practice. Sociological theories don't just live in academic journals, they shape real classrooms. They influence how we teach, what we teach, how schools are organized, among other things. They also guide curriculum design, policy development, and efforts to make education more inclusive and equitable. Whether you're addressing gender bias, or promoting multicultural education, or designing learner-centered environments, sociology gives us the tools to act with insight and intention. So what does all this mean for us as educators? It means we must approach education not just as a technical process, but as a social and philosophical one. We need to be aware of the broader forces at play: cultural, economic, political, and how they shape what happens in the classroom. We must also be thoughtful about our own teaching philosophies, recognizing the tensions between personal growth and societal development or expectations. Now, as we conclude, always bear in mind that sociology of education offers powerful tools for understanding the complex relationship between schooling and society. I dare say this relationship is symbiotic in nature. Schools feed the society and the society feeds the school. The relationship is symbiotic. It challenges us to think beyond the textbook, to ask deeper questions about why education looks the way it does, who it serves, and how it can be improved. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to your thoughts and questions. Just so you know, more comprehensive study notes will be posted on the learning management systems. And until next time, it's goodbye from me.